The train derailed at 6:59 a.m., and the emergency response began almost immediately thereafter. At 7:01 a.m., the Gloucester County Emergency Response Center received a 911 call from the Paulsboro Deputy Fire Chief who lived next to the accident scene. The Deputy Fire Chief stated that the train had derailed and a punctured tank car was leaking into the water and emitting gas. He said the creek was full of vapor from the leaking tank car. At 7:06 a.m., the first responding police officer reported that the train crew told him the chemicals being shipped were potentially life-threatening. At 7:07 a.m., the fire chief requested assistance from 2 hazardous materials teams, one from Gloucester County and one from Paulsboro Refining Company. Hazardous materials teams are supposed to help the incident commander assess the risks of a chemical release. They are required to wear protective gear when entering the contaminated area or hot zone. At 7:09 a.m., the deputy fire chief reported that he could see a placard showing the number 1086 attached to a leaking tank car. The fire dispatcher responded that placard number 1086 signifies vinyl chloride, a highly flammable and toxic material. For a large spill of vinyl chloride, the Emergency Response Guidebook recommends an initial downwind evacuation of at least 1/2 mile. The guidebook also instructs first responders to stay clear of vapors, fumes, and smoke. At 7:17 a.m., the fire chief arrived on scene and assumed the role of incident commander and set up the command post in an open field 50 yards from the accident scene. The command post is supposed to be located in a safe area outside of the hot zone. OSHA standards require the incident commander to identify all hazardous substances, exercise scene control, and assure that appropriate personal protective equipment is used. When inhalation hazards are present, self-contained breathing apparatus is required until air monitoring shows that hazardous exposures will not occur. Firefighters who responded to this accident did not wear their self-contained breathing apparatus. Although police and fire department communications remained on separate radio frequencies, a police sergeant was present with the fire chief at the command post to coordinate the activity of the police department with that of the fire department. At 7:26 a.m., the police ordered a mandatory evacuation of a 3-block area. Several police officers who were evacuating residents reported they entered the chemical cloud without wearing respiratory protection. At 7:28 a.m., a half hour after the derailment, a member of the Paulsboro Refining Hazardous Materials team arrived on scene to provide hazardous materials response guidance to the fire chief. At 7:29 a.m., a police sergeant at the incident command post radioed a change in evacuation orders to shelter in place, stating that the fog was just a reaction to the spill and was not toxic. Residents were instructed to stay inside with the windows closed. At 7:29 a.m., the fire chief requested the fire dispatcher to provide a synopsis of the hazards of vinyl chloride. Contrary to the police department statement that the chemical was non-toxic, the fire dispatcher radioed the fire chief that vinyl chloride is a highly flammable, reactive chemical and is an explosion hazard. The fire dispatcher went on to report that contact with vinyl chloride can severely irritate and burn the eyes and respiratory system. Exposure can cause shortness of breath, nausea, confusion, and loss of consciousness. It can also cause damage to the liver, nervous, and respiratory systems. Even though the fire chief had received this information about the hazards of vinyl chloride, the police continued to report the material was non-toxic. From 7:40 a.m. and throughout the morning, Railroad workers walked onto the bridge and inspected the derailed tank cars. Rail workers are subject to the same safety standards for hot zone entry as are emergency response personnel and must coordinate their activities with the incident commander. These railroad workers did not wear respiratory protection or chemical protective equipment. At 8:33 a.m., an hour and a half after the derailment, the Paulsboro Refining Hazardous Materials Team air monitoring data showed that first responders were being exposed to vinyl chloride concentrations that significantly exceeded permissible or safe levels. Continued air monitoring throughout the morning found unsafe levels of vinyl chloride, yet emergency responders still did not use respiratory protection.